a story that is gripping the nation. It is the investigation of the murder.
JonBennet's slaying is now one of America's greatest murder mysteries.
Very little about this case makes sense.
20 revisited the crime and continued the call for justice.
JonBennet Ramsey, the highest-profile unsolved case in the nation, as referred to by Court TV. The decades-old unsolved murder mystery with much evidence but no conclusion as of making this video. Let's see what we have in this case. Christmas night of 1996, JonBennet Ramsey, a 6-year-old girl from Boulder, Colorado, was reported missing on the call to 911. The call was made by Patsy Ramsey, the mother of JonBennet Ramsey. She reported, "We have a kidnapping," she said.
"We have a kidnapping, please hurry, we have a..."
There is a note left and our daughter is missing. After a few more questions, she hung up the call. The call didn't last long and the police were at their home in just 3 minutes. The note was about a ransom note. The kidnappers had demanded an amount of $118,000. Patsy found the note on the staircase when she was going downstairs to make herself coffee. The letter was from Mr. Ramsey, and it reads,
"Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. You're a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1977, you must follow our instructions to the letter."
The letter seems to be written in a hurry, and I have never heard of a ransom note from someone who respects the other person. One other thing is the food for thought, and that is who hung up on the emergency call. The ransom note reads further,
"You will withdraw $118,000 from your bank account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I'll call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviations of my instructions will result in immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter did not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded."
So, much talk for a ransom note again, spelling mistakes, and still he managed to write 2.5 pages. This note is strange and something doesn't add up. They started the note from how they respect John's business and asked for just a small amount. I know we can't move on from the note, but still, let's move on to the case. It was morning around 5:40. Father JonBennet Ramsey and Mother Patsy Ramsey were awake and allegedly their 9-year-old Purke Ramsey was sleeping. When police saw the ransom note, they believed the kidnapping and didn't check the house. Ramsey followed the instructions and reached there to hand over the money. The police and FBI were in action. The place was all under security, but Ramsey's didn't get any call. All of them moved back to their house and whatever they saw was worse than anything. I'm still wondering if there was any intruder entry. Did police check for any footprints in the snow? Or any door or window idle for their entry? And an intruder who entered the daughter's room like a pro. Would he be so silly to put the ransom note on the stairs for someone to treat it like trash? The house was total turmoil. It appeared as if a storm passed the house. They checked every corner to see what had happened in not more than 8 hours. Ramsey's home was full of policemen, family members and neighbors. John Ramsey was roaming around the house and he saw JonBennet's body strangled to death in the basement with a garrote in her neck, duct tape on her mouth and her torso covered by a blanket. He immediately picked her up and brought her upstairs, which unfortunately destroyed potential evidences by disturbing the crime scene. Later, autopsy revealed that she died of asphyxiation due to strangulation in addition to a skull fracture. She was attacked by a heavy metal or baseball bat. She was wearing her clothes so there was no visible sign of physical abuse. But when the autopsy revealed her underwear had DNA that didn't match hers. The blanket she was wrapped in also has DNA samples. Police searched for any semen samples in the basement and the house, and it was nowhere found. Was the lock broken? Or did this time anyone check for the footprints? Or was someone in their house only who did all this? Did they check the house properly in the first place? They left the whole house empty for hours and consulted the police first without ensuring their daughter was alright. After the body was found in the basement itself, police started looking for other evidences. In the basement, there was a window that the killer could have used to get inside. It was small at a height that made police believe it was not used.
Was the lock broken? Or did this time anyone check the footprints? Or was someone in their house only who did all this? Did they check the house properly in the first place? They left the whole house empty for hours and consulted the police first without ensuring their daughter was alright. After the body was found in the basement itself, police started looking for other evidences. In the basement, there was a window that the killer could have used to get inside. It was small at height that made police believe it was not used. The window was open, but the cobwebs of the window were undisturbed, and entering without disturbing them was impossible. Below that window, there was an unknown suitcase. After the basement, the search continued to other parts of the house. On the side of the telephone, there were notepads, one of Patsy's and one of John. The pages of the notepads were similar to the ransom note. Some pages on the note were torn out, and there was one practice note as well. It appeared that the intruder had used their pad and their pen, wrote a 2.5-page long ransom note and then left with their daughter, and then waited for them to leave the house to come inside and place her body in the basement. All of this happened and no one knew. Police started suspecting the family members. This case has so much. How is this still a mystery? If JonBennet was harmed indoors, at least Burke would have known, but as far as I remember, Burke was asleep when the call to 911 was made, and probably before that as well. The investigator interviewed Burke, elder brother of JonBennet, to see if he knows something. They asked when was the last time he saw her sister awake. He said, in the car. Last night they went to a family friend's house for a Christmas party. When they were returning, John fell asleep in the car. They asked Burke if he would know if someone would have attacked JonBennet with a baseball bat. He said maybe, but he hadn't heard anything like that. Based on his answer, it can be concluded that he was asleep the whole night, and so was JonBennet. But autopsy and kitchen revealed something else. JonBennet has eaten papaya as her last meal, and a bowl of sliced papaya was found in the kitchen. If she has been sleeping since they came back, when did she have papaya? The then rising theories were questioning if the family had done this, including the 9-year-old Burke Ramsey. On New Year's Eve, JonBennet was buried, and in just 5 to 6 days, the case was well known in the whole nation. People were checking for every update and were curious. JonBennet had won many child pageants at that small age, as Patsy was also a pageant winner. The pictures of JonBennet were all over the internet, and the people were in awe to see a girl of just 6 years dressed so elegantly as winning different pageant titles, such as America's Royal Miss, Little Miss Charbelloy, Little Miss Colorado, Colorado State All-Stars Kid Cover Girl, and the National Tiny Miss Beauty. The little girl had so many admirers of different ages, and it made people think maybe no privacy to her could be the reason behind the inhuman killing of the little angel. The case has been so interesting till this point, and it kept getting better and evolving as a case that can keep you involved even after decades, as we are talking about it. The Ramsey couple gave their first exclusive interview to CNN instead of police. This made the case and all the evidence public before any further investigation. Patsy and John Ramsey hired individual advocates for them, as they were also suspects in the case. A show was made at that time that gives theory that Patsy accidentally killed her daughter that night, annoyed by her bedwetting habit. The show also gave the theory that Burke accidentally killed her out of jealousy. Later, the show has to face lawsuits against them filed by the Ramseys.
For further investigation, police asked for the handwriting samples of the couple to match with the ransom note. There was a theory that the ransom note was written by Patsy and was dictated by John, but the evidence couldn't prove this theory. The amount asked in the ransom number was the amount of bonus John had gotten last year, which was $118,000. How would an intruder know this? The case peaked its limelight and talks about the family were everywhere. Police asked John if he had suspected someone. He took the name of the person who was a family friend. Bill McReynolds, Santa to the Christmas parties, was at the Ramsey's home last night. He was influenced a lot by JonBennet, as he said JonBennet once gave him a bottle of glitters when he was admitted for an operation. For him, digesting the fact that JonBennet Ramsey is no more is tougher than his operations. He even asked his wife, "When I die, I am going to be cremated. I have asked my wife to mix the stardust JonBennet gave me with my ashes. We are going to go up behind the cabin here and have it blow away in the winds." But these speculations couldn't prove anything, and he was no more a suspect. Strange man, or love for her? Based on all the evidences they had, police suspected the family members more, as the ransom note was not adding up to the scene. Theories were that the family killed the daughter and then wrote the note out of panic by using her left hand, but on the account of no proper evidence, the arrest was never made. Another suspect in the murder was the house help. House helps keep an extra key. While investigating, her appearances didn't fit for the profile the police were looking for. But she kept voicing against Patsy. After the murder of JonBennet, police knocked on the door of the house help, Linda Hoffman Poff. They had an extra key and major money problems. When the police told her that the girl was no more, she shouted out of sorrow and started shaking. Police interrogated her for 3 hours and asked if she had ever seen the sign of physical abuse with the girl at home, or if she had found any samples of semen in the basement or in the house while cleaning. Police reportedly took her fingerprints and several strands of her head and asked her to write $118,000 on paper. She then testified in front of grand jury for a total of 8 hours. She made a statement against Patsy that read, "I think she had multiple personalities. She'd be in a good mood and then she'd be cranky. She got into arguments with JonBennet after wearing a dress or about a friend coming over. I had never seen Patsy so upset." She is still firmly accused of this crime. The suspects in the case were many. One among them was a school teacher of JonBennet. We'll discuss him further, but this one was a suspect when police found a cutout of JonBennet's news article in his backpack when he was apprehended for another drug case. The private investigator of Ramsey suspected him. His name was Gary Olivia. When he came into the scene, his friend Michael Vale came in the support of Oli Gray, private investigators of Ramsey's. He told the police the day before the news of JonBennet came to be known, Gary Olivia called him and said he had hurt someone in Colorado. So many things were strange about this call. They were not closely connected on the call. He was not a resident of Colorado. Why did he tell him, and which girl was he referring to? After the murder of JonBennet came into knowledge of Michael, he tried contacting the police several times, but they couldn't pay attention to him, as then there were thousands of tips coming from all directions. In 2006, a school teacher, John McCurr, confessed out of the blue that he killed JonBennet. He sent apology emails to John Ramsey, whose content remained unknown but showed his sexual fascination with JonBennet. He had been sending the emails for a long time, and it was disturbing for John Ramsey. Carr emerged as a man who was moved to confess after he learned that Patsy Ramsey, the dead girl's mother, was dying of cancer. Carr referred to him by the name of Taxis, a lover of JonBennet, who was with her when she was dying. He took the help of Colorado journalism professor Tracy, who had produced 3 documentaries on this case, to contact Ramsey. He was arrested in Bangkok. From all the evidence available, he seemed to be a potential killer, but soon after the DNA didn't match, he was also released. On 24th June 2006, Patsy Ramsey died of cancer. She was buried next to JonBennet. 5 years later, JonBennet Ramsey remarried. Burke gave his first formal interview after John's death and Dr. Phil's show in 2016. The murder of JonBennet is still a cold case and no arrest has been made. Police believed they would bring peace and justice to the little girl, but they haven't yet. Life goes on and the time waits for none, but we care. We do remember JonBennet. The angel was on the earth for just 6 years, but she would have celebrated her 28th birthday this August. But indeed, you live in our hearts, JonBennet.